The prison bully tried to show off in front of everyone, but the new guy destroyed him in seconds. They say every prison's got a king. But that day, everyone learned the hard truth. Sometimes the real king isn't the one who shouts the loudest, but the one who shuts you up with a single move. The yard at Lanesboro Federal Pen, out in North Carolina, was bleak and suffocating. Cracked concrete, guard towers with rifles trained down, electric fences humming, and a routine ruled not by order, but by fear. Inside, nobody cared about official rules. Only the laws of the meanest men carried weight. It was just after lunch call. Inmates in faded orange jumpsuits stood in line, dead quiet, eyes down, moving like shadows. It wasn't respect, it was fear. Fear of brushing shoulders with the wrong guy, the type who'd knock your teeth out with one punch or stick a fork in your throat just for kicks. And right in the middle of the yard, strutting like a peacock among crows, came Troy, Pitbull Mason, the prison's top dog, the self-proclaimed boss of Block D. His body was a wall of muscle, tattoos crawling over every inch of skin, each one telling stories of kills, turf wars in Chicago, and bones he'd broken. A fat gold chain hung around his neck, a gift from an old gang boss, and a Cuban cigar was practically glued to his mouth. Guards looked the other way, and nobody ever dared to check him. He walked slow, heavy, like he was inspecting his kingdom. Every so often he'd shove somebody, knock over a tray, or whisper threats just to remind folks who ran the place. Pitbull didn't have to fight every day, just enough to keep the fear alive. Until that day. At the far end of the yard, sitting alone at a concrete table, was the new fish, a stranger, tall, broad-shouldered, eyes half shut like he wasn't even here. He ate with the calm of a free man, every bite measured, almost ritualistic. His tray was arranged with military neatness, rice shaped like a dome, vegetables separated, roasted meat, a steaming bowl of soup. And he was using chopsticks. In a place like this, that wasn't just rare, it was a statement. Like he was saying, "I don't belong to your world," and that pissed Pitbull off. He froze mid-step. One of his boys whispered in his ear. The guy was a transfer from Fort Leavenworth Military Prison, files sealed tight. The rumors floating around were enough to raise eyebrows. Ex-military, special ops training, accused of killing 3 men, 2 of them officers. But Pitbull didn't give a damn about backstories. What got under his skin was the lack of fear. He marched over, climbed up on the bench like he owned it, cigar still hanging from his lips, and without a word flipped the steaming bowl of soup straight onto the rookie's head. Hot broth ran down his face, meat slid onto his shoulders, and sticky rice clung to his hair. The whole prison froze. It was like time itself stopped. The lunch line stalled. Guards stopped pretending not to see. The air went dead silent. The new guy didn't move at first. He just took a slow breath, set his chopsticks down, wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, and deliberately lifted his head. Their eyes locked. No cussing, no threats, no warnings. Then he stood up. What happened next was so fast no one even processed it. The new guy snatched Pitbull's wrist with surgical precision, spun his body in one smooth motion, popped his shoulder out with a loud crack, and with a simple kick, launched the prison king off the table like he was a rag doll. The giant hit the ground hard, not just a fall, a collapse. He screamed in agony, cigar flying, skull smacking the concrete with a sickening thud. Silence turned to panic. 2 guards rushed in, inmates scrambled back, others just stood frozen, trying to understand what the hell they had just witnessed. But the rookie, he just sat back down, picked another plate off the tray, served himself again, and kept eating like nothing had happened. Calm as ever. Like the whole thing was just a minor inconvenience. Meanwhile, Pitbull was screaming, trying to stand with his shoulder dangling loose like a busted grocery bag. Medics rushed in, guards dragged him away. Nobody said a word. And that's when the nickname was born, the Silence. because he hadn't spoken a single word, not before, not during, not after. No one knew his real name, just that he'd arrived 3 days earlier, that he never responded to taunts, that he slept with his eyes half open, that he never asked anyone for a damn thing, and now the biggest bully in the pen was crying in agony because of one single move. That night, the cells locked early, but nobody slept easy, not because of Pitbull, because of something far worse, because of someone who didn't need to speak to be feared. His name, at least on the grey badge clipped to his jumpsuit, was Elias Kane. Inmate number 11389492, 15 years for unspecified military crimes. But inside those walls, nobody called him that. After what went down in the yard, he was known to everyone as the Silence. The nickname spread faster than gossip. Within hours, guards were whispering it, inmates were trading it in the halls, and bets were being placed in the shadows. It was the kind of story that changed the air in a prison, the kind that made even predators walk carefully. Lanesborough Federal Pen was never a place for second chances. It didn't rehabilitate. It broke men down with fear, backroom rules, and bloody alliances. And those who didn't adapt, they vanished. But Elias didn't seem interested in alliances, didn't seem interested in anything, really. In those first nights, the block's veterans tried testing him. Donnie, a wiry white guy who ran the cigarette and pill hustle, tried a fake friendly approach. "If you need anything, man, just holler. Around here we survive by having each other's backs, you feel me?" Elias just looked at him for half a second, then went right back to stitching the sleeve of his jumpsuit, torn during transfer. Didn't say a word. Donnie never tried again. Across the block, Carlos Rivera, a former Texas gangbanger, thought it'd be smart to poke the bear. He sent 2 lackeys to mess with Elias in the showers, snatch his towel, spit in the sink, small stuff, just to see if he'd snap. Elias didn't react. But later that night, both lackeys ended up in the infirmary. Nobody saw what happened. Cameras, technical issues, guards, asleep. The facts were enough: cracked ribs, busted pride, and silence. Neither one dared speak afterward. Elias didn't talk to anyone. He ate in silence. He trained alone every morning, turning his cell into a makeshift gym. Push-ups, sit-ups, isometrics on the bars, precise, obsessive. His body was strong but not showy. None of Pitbull's puffed-up bravado. Elias was all precision, all control. Ramirez, the oldest con on the block, watched with eyes sharpened by decades inside. He'd seen dangerous men before, but never one who carried that much discipline in his stare. "That guy ain't just surviving," Ramirez muttered to Donnie one night. "He's waiting, like he's got a plan." "Waiting for what?" Donnie asked, frowning. Ramirez didn't answer. Meanwhile, in the prison's admin offices, Elias's name was raising eyebrows. The reports didn't add up. His case was sealed, military details classified, but the records showed that before prison, he'd served in a special ops unit, and then he disappeared. 3 whole years. No official missions, no records, no trace. When he resurfaced, he was drenched in blood. 2 officers dead, a third in a coma. Convicted without a public trial, transferred without a fixed lawyer, files stamped classified. In the yard, that past was nothing but rumor. What kept everyone on edge wasn't what Elias had done before. It was the chilling thought of what he could do at any moment, without warning, without hesitation. Pitbull. He never showed his face in the yard again. Some said he was stuck in medical, dislocated shoulder, busted collarbone, facial fractures. Others claimed he begged for voluntary transfer into isolation. Elias? He stayed the same. Silent, untouchable, watching. But something was starting to shift. The alliances inside Lanesborough started to shift. The guys who once followed Pitbull were splintering off. Some ran to Rivera for cover, others leaned toward Donny, but a third group was forming in silence. They didn't speak. They just copied Elias, up early, training in silence, staying clear of drama, like they were waiting for something or someone. By the third week of Elias's arrival, Lanesborough Federal Pen wasn't the same place anymore. The balance of power was broken. Fear had a new owner, but where there's a power vacuum, there's war. With Pitbull gone, two names rose to claim the empty throne. Carlos Rivera, with his gang ties and network spread across the blocks, and Donny Myers, with his guard connections and black market trade that didn't just move cash, it moved favors. Both knew Elias was at the center of the storm. Both knew he didn't want power, and that's exactly why he was the most dangerous of them all. In Block D, the discipline risk wing, an invisible tension grew thicker by the day. No shouting, no open brawls, just silence. Stolen glances, measured steps, quick huddles in dark corners, all circling one unspoken question: who's going to take down the silence? Carlos made the first move. On Thursday, during open yard, when all blocks hit the outdoor rec field, 5 men circled Elias while he was doing pull-ups on a rusted bar. The plan was simple: jump him while off balance, humiliate him in front of everyone. They didn't want him dead. They wanted his aura broken. What happened was the opposite. The first guy grabbed for Elias's waist, the second swung at his ribs, the third flashed a homemade shank. Elias dropped from the bar, spun like a sledgehammer, dropped the first with a hip kick, slipped past the second, chopping his throat with the side of his hand. Snatched the third's wrist mid-strike, snapped it with a clean twist, and caught the blade before it hit the ground, tossing it far across the yard. The last two froze, backed off. One dropped to his knees, hands up. By the time the guards rushed in, Elias was already sitting cross-legged on the ground, breathing slow, like he'd just wrapped up a workout. His attackers limped to the infirmary. Elias walked back to his cell, no questions asked. Nobody tried again. Donny, more calculating, went a different route, poison through influence. He sent quiet offers, better clothes, extra protection, insider intel. Finally a note: let's talk, you and me. 3 minutes, that's all. Elias didn't even look. Left the note unopened on the table in the day room. Message received. He didn't want favors, didn't want enemies. He wanted something nobody there could figure out. And when a man becomes feared, he starts being studied. Ramirez, the old lifer with sharp eyes, began writing. Tiny scraps of paper stashed under his mattress. Each night, he jotted what Elias did. His patterns, his routines, his silence. He's waiting for something, Ramirez whispered to himself. Or someone. But outside those walls, the world was shifting too. Federal agent Lawrence Beckett had started digging into Elias Kane's sealed file. A fat dossier stamped Level 4, military classified. Inside, almost no words, just a handful of photos. One image stood out: Elias kneeling in a Virginia forest beside 3 corpses, 2 army officers, 1 man in a suit, all shot, all wearing the same look of raw terror. Beckett smelled something big, bigger than prison, and he wanted to know why Elias was silent. Back inside Lanesborough, the place was a powder keg. Carlos Rivera was bleeding respect. His own men whispered about Elias with admiration. Donny kept his distance, but never stopped watching. And the guards? They were changing too. Some avoided Elias's gaze, some asked for shift changes, one straight up quit, and through it all, Elias said nothing. But in cell 43, right next to him, Ramirez woke one night to hear something he'd never heard before. Elias, lying on his bunk, whispering to himself. Short phrases, coded, like he was rehearsing. Ramirez faked sleep, but he heard it. Phase 2, forced quarantine, identification, Beckett, authorization 904C, protocol Hades active. And then, Silence. The old man sat up, heart pounding like a war drum. The war in the pen was just beginning, but Elias wasn't just a prisoner. He was a living mission. A plan in motion nobody there could understand. Not yet. Meanwhile, Elias Kane's name echoed down the corridors of Lanesborough. The place was becoming a spider web of shifting alliances, backroom whispers, and moves nobody could read. The prison still breathed, but the air felt heavier by the day. Ramirez and the hidden notes. Ramirez now wrote compulsively. Every word Elias whispered, every routine, every detail. He began connecting dots. Phase 2, Protocol Hades, Identification, Beckett. He didn't know the content, but he knew the structure. Back in the 90s, Ramirez had been a DEA informant before landing inside. He recognized coded government language. And this wasn't prison talk. This was operational chatter. Ramirez feared he was losing his mind. Because the only explanation made no sense at all. Elias wasn't locked up. Elias was planted. But why? Carlos Rivera and the bruised ego. In the East Wing, Carlos Rivera was boiling. After his men got wrecked, his rep collapsed. His crew still respected him, but respect without fear was worthless. And in prison, losing fear meant losing power. So Carlos did the unthinkable. He cut a deal with Donnie. "This guy ain't here by accident," Rivera hissed during a late-night meet in the empty cafeteria. "And if he's planted," Donnie muttered back, "then we got no choice. We take him out, even if it's in a coffin." Over the next weeks, Carlos and Donnie planted spies among Elias's copycats, the ones nicknamed the Ghosts. Men who trained early, ate alone, stayed quiet. But something was off. They weren't acting like regular cons, too disciplined, too organized, like soldiers in disguise. Agent Beckett and the buried past. Outside the prison walls, Agent Lawrence Beckett got his hands on what nobody else could, an internal copy of the Special Ops Unit report known as Project Hades, a black-budget government program shut down after a botched mission in Africa. Elias Kane's name was on every single page. He was the last active operative of the project, the only survivor of Operation Chimera. And he vanished 3 years later after filing a handwritten report that read, "The enemy is inside." Beckett froze. This isn't a prisoner. This is a live bomb. He tried reaching the warden at Lanesborough, but the line hit a legal firewall. Someone above him was guarding the mission's secrecy. Someone wanted Elias to stay exactly where he was. The guards and the fear within. Inside the pen, even the correctional officers started splitting into factions. Some whispered Elias was the Antichrist. Others swore he was some kind of vigilante, but the sharpest ones began following his orders without him ever speaking. A nod, a lingering glance, a hand gesture. That was enough for doors to swing open seconds before he walked through, and no one could explain why. Until Officer Winston, a veteran with 18 years in the system, was found locked in his own booth, shaking, mumbling in shock. "I saw it. I saw him vanish. 30 seconds, off the cameras. He was gone." He was gone. The sub-network inside the prison. Then came something even more unsettling. The listener network. Inmates who never approached Elias but tracked him like hawks, memorizing where he sat, when he slept, what he ate. They didn't talk to each other, but they were everywhere. Ramirez noticed first. No tattoos, no scars. They looked clean, like they'd been placed there. And if Elias wasn't alone, what if the whole prison was crawling with ghosts nobody knew were alive? Lanesborough kept running, but the real prison wasn't made of walls and bars. It was made of secrets, and they were about to spill out. 7 seconds of darkness. On a Tuesday before dawn, the main generator failed. For 7 seconds, the prison drowned in pitch-black silence. 7 seconds, that's all it took to change everything. Cameras froze, doors jammed, red strobes pulsed. An alarm wailed through the halls, then cut off as fast as it began. Inmates stirred in confusion, but the guards gave no sign of life. Elias Kane was already standing. He'd planned for this. Hidden in the back of his cell, wedged between the concrete beams, was a makeshift transmitter, disassembled, invisible to the naked eye, rebuilt from radio scraps, heating wire, and a sliver of flashlight battery. Weeks of work, silent, unseen. In the dark, he activated the protocol, zero quarantine. Event initiated. 2 minutes later, the max security cell in Block G clicked open by a hand nobody saw. A figure emerged, gaunt, hollow-eyed, shirt torn. A former soldier convicted of treason, Malcolm Spectre Glover, vanished from the general population months ago. He and Elias crossed paths in Corridor B1. No words, just a nod. The mission was live. Flashback, the birth of silence. 4 years earlier, Elias Kane wasn't an inmate. He was lead agent of Project Hades, America's shadow arm of tactical counterintelligence, off-the-books ops, silent executions, surgical interventions at home and abroad. During Operation Chimera, his unit was tasked with intercepting an American mole buried inside the Pentagon's own chain of command, but the mission collapsed. Elias came back with 3 bodies, 2 officers, and 1 civilian no one could ID, the man in the suit. A ghost who showed up in every field report but in no official database. When Elias tried to blow the whistle, revealing a corruption web inside the government itself, tied to biotech contractors, private prisons, and blacklisted executions, he was silenced, buried alive in Lanesboro, stripped to a number. But he wasn't there to serve time. He was still on mission, and the target was still breathing. Back inside the prison, with the system collapsing, chaos should have erupted. But instead, silence. The ghosts, those inmates nobody had ever fully understood, moved into formation, like they'd been waiting for this. They locked down strategic points, the infirmary, admin block, camera room. Old Ramirez, now fully convinced he was trapped in a war that wasn't his, scribbled furiously from his cell. This isn't a breakout. This is an execution. Carlos Rivera, realizing the game had slipped beyond his control, scrambled to rally his men. But 3 had already vanished. A 4th was found hanging by one ankle, unconscious. Another, simply gone. On the other side, Donnie caught on quicker. He gathered everything he had, pills, smokes, anything to bribe his way out, but there was no one left to negotiate with. The prison was under the grip of a ghost. The name behind the chaos. At 3:17 a.m., the ghosts cracked open the records room. Inside, hidden in a biometric sealed safe, was a single physical file with one name, Warden Emmett Kravitz, the real target. He wasn't just the prison administrator, he was one of the former overseers of Project Hades. Elias wasn't hunting him for revenge, he was hunting him for proof, and Kravitz knew it. He knew Elias was coming. That's why Kravitz had hidden for years. That's why he kept the reports on paper off the grid. That's why he kept Spectre alive, locked away, cut off from everyone. But that night, it all came crashing down. The meeting. In an abandoned conference room where bare concrete made every sound echo, Elias finally stood face to face with Kravitz. The warden sat there, a pistol tucked beneath a stack of papers. "I knew you'd come," Kravitz rasped. Elias said nothing. "You want to expose it all? You can't. They'll erase you, just like they tried with me, just like they did with everyone else." Elias calmly set a recorder on the table, pressed REC. Kravitz hesitated. His face hardened for a few seconds, and then he broke. It started in Langley, Section 7. That's where they built the list. Operation Pilot. We train men to kill on U.S. soil to protect private interests. He talked for 10 minutes, every word captured. Then Elias moved, disarmed him in a flash, and spoke for the first time since entering Lanesborough. One word: end. System restore. The power came back. Lights snapped on. Cells auto-locked. But the world had shifted. Dawn crept in quietly. No alarms, no screams. Just a strange heaviness in the air, like the walls themselves had witnessed something unspeakable. The official report for that night read, "System malfunction. Restored in 42 minutes. No incidents recorded." But everyone inside knew something had happened, something big. Silence in the guard wing. The officers were restless, head of security. Hughes stared at the monitors, suspicion in his eyes. Everything looked normal, cells shut, inmates quiet. But the veteran guards whispered the impossible. I swear they moved, like they knew exactly where the cameras were. There was motion in Block B, but sensors caught nothing. Ramirez tried to pass a note, full of names. The note vanished. Ramirez was hauled to the infirmary that same day. Officially, nervous collapse. Unofficially, silenced. Carlos and Donnie. Cracks in the empty throne. Carlos Rivera was hiding, literally. After that night, 4 of his men vanished. 2 were beaten half dead, and his closest ally, Donnie, had disappeared from Genpop. Donnie, on the other hand, had taken refuge among the ghosts in exchange for protection. That was the first crack in the old power structure. Fear no longer flowed from the system or from the guards. It came from someone who never asked for power, yet took it anyway. The next morning, Donnie tried talking to Elias. Nervous, but pretending calm. I just want to know, what are you, man? An agent? An experiment? Elias held his stare for long seconds. I'm the consequence, he finally said. The second time anyone had heard his voice. Donnie never asked again. Not to Carlos, not to anyone. The leaked image that afternoon, a hidden admin camera flickered to life. No one knew how. It captured a single image. Elias, sitting beside a black folder stuffed with documents, and behind him, Warden Kravitz, unconscious but alive. The photo was sent anonymously to Agent Beckett's personal email. No message, no sender, no trace. Beckett froze when he saw it. He didn't kill the target. He wanted us to see. In that instant, Beckett understood. Elias was broadcasting, not just settling scores, delivering a calculated exposure, and he wasn't working alone. Inside the prison, the new order. Within days, Lanesborough's shadow hierarchy collapsed. Carlos Rivera lost his grip. Donnie faded into irrelevance. The ghosts, once invisible, stepped into the open. They didn't beat anyone, didn't threaten, didn't intimidate. They simply controlled everything. Who got hot bread at breakfast? They knew. Who was summoned for interrogation? They knew before the guards did. Who was getting transferred? They knew before the inmate himself. The prison was no longer functioning for the system. It was functioning for them. At the center stood Elias, never raising his voice, never demanding. He walked through Lanesborough like a monk among savages, and no one dared lay a finger on him. The interview that never happened, Agent Beckett pushed for clearance to visit Lanesborough. He needed to see Elias face to face. The response came down cold from higher up. The matter is closed. Do not pursue. Do not get involved. But Beckett wasn't stupid. He knew what do not get involved meant. It meant the truth was still alive, and more dangerous than ever. He printed the image, locked it inside a personal safe, and started writing an off-the-books report. Title, The Silence, the Man Who Jailed the System Itself. Inside Lanesborough in cell 47, Elias slept, eyes open, breathing slow, like a man still waiting for the next move, because the mission wasn't over. 3 weeks after the event that shook the prison's foundations, everything seemed to fall into an artificial calm. But anyone who'd spent enough time behind bars knew calms like that never lasted. It was the silence before the next storm. The new warden, the prison's administration, had shifted quietly. No press release, no ceremony. The new warden, Harlan Deeks, slipped in like a shadow. A cold man, clinical, face carved in stone, former security consultant for US military bases overseas. He knew who Elias was, and Elias knew who he was. At their first encounter, they didn't exchange a single word, just 5 seconds of eye contact. But Deeks understood the silent language. "I know what you did. I'm here to control you now." What Deeks didn't know was that Elias had learned something. The strength that carried him this far wasn't enough to take him forward. The past weighs differently. Now, in Cell 47, Elias stuck to his routine: training, silence, focus. But something inside began to shift. Ramirez never returned from the infirmary. Donnie no longer spoke. Carlos Rivera had been transferred overnight to a federal pen in Georgia. No warning, no hearing. And the ghosts. Now their eyes were fixed on Elias, waiting. Before, they copied his discipline. Now, they waited for leadership. The exact opposite of what he wanted. Elias was trained to obey, not to command. His mission was clear: eliminate the target, secure proof, vanish. But now the world, quietly, didn't want him gone. For the first time since his arrest, Elias felt something heavier than orders: responsibility, not just for an operation, but for people. Ramirez's message. One night, a brown envelope slid under Elias's cell door. No name. Inside, a single sheet of paper, one sentence scrawled by hand: "The mission changes, so does the soul." It was Ramirez's handwriting. Elias closed his eyes for a few seconds and knew the old man was dead. He didn't cry. But for 2 hours he didn't move, staring at the envelope like it was the only thing real in the world. The next morning, Elias broke his pattern. For the first time, he gathered 3 ghosts to train with him. No explanation, just gestures, corrections. He showed them how to move unseen, how to breathe under pressure, how to drop a man twice their size, subtle, precise. But to anyone watching, it was the birth of a leader, Deeks' new game. Harlan Deeks wasn't naive. He knew Elias had built influence. He knew the ghosts weren't regular inmates, and worst of all, he knew there were eyes outside the walls, watching, waiting for a mistake. So he switched tactics, cut Elias's food portions, interrupted his workouts with false alarms, installed cameras inside his cell without clearance, and finally dropped in a cellmate, Ryder, officially a low-risk inmate, in reality a plant. But Elias didn't bite. He wasn't the man who broke bullies with one strike anymore. Now, he let the enemy expose themselves, which made him far more dangerous. The meeting with Beckett. On the last Friday of the month, something unexpected happened. Beckett showed up at Lanesboro, not through official channels, but disguised as a civilian visitor. Elias was escorted to room 14, no cameras, reserved for lawyers. The door shut. They sat across from each other. 10 seconds of silence. Then Beckett asked, "Why didn't you escape?" Elias didn't hesitate. "Because running lets them erase everything." Beckett nodded. "And now?" Elias exhaled, glanced at the false mirror on the wall. "Now we drag the system out of the shadows." "Just you?" Elias looked up at the ceiling as if he knew someone else was listening. "Not anymore. Transformation. Complete." Back in cell 47, Elias now trained with 5 ghosts. But more than that, he began teaching silence to the others, ordinary men. The forgotten, the invisible. He wasn't teaching them how to fight. He was teaching them how to observe, how to endure, how to survive with purpose. And so, something was born inside those walls. something not even the government had planned. A cell of consciousness within the prison. Lanesborough still had walls, guns and rules, but the ones running it now wore no uniform, carried no badge, and never needed to shout. All they needed was silence. On the surface, life at Lanesborough looked normal again. On paper, the prison was efficient. No riots reported, no fights for weeks, no serious infractions. But in the shadows of the cells, in the way inmates watched each other, in the silent movements of the ghosts, something was building, a quiet preparation, and at the center of it stood Elias Kane. The walls closing in Warden. Harlan Deeks was growing restless. Despite his efforts to crush Elias, with food restrictions, extra surveillance, forced isolation, the man remained unshaken. Worse, he remained influential. Veteran guards began requesting transfers, some filed medical leave, others simply vanished, reassigned with no explanation. Deeks knew something was coming, but what? He had no idea. Elias made no mistakes, left no traces, issued no threats. Yet day by day, more men began to mirror him. Donnie and the last warnings. Donnie, the former king of contraband, was now nothing more than a middleman between the old order and the new. He stayed alive because he understood the value of information, and because Elias allowed him to keep breathing. One sweltering afternoon, Donnie was summoned by a ghost. In the dark corner of the laundry, he was handed a small package, 2 memory chips, a hand-drawn map, and a single whispered message. "You're leaving in 3 days. When you're out, give this to Beckett and don't look back." Donnie swallowed hard. "This is the fall of the system?" The ghost didn't reply, just melted back into the shadows. The death of a guard. The first real breach came midweek. Officer Hughes, head of night security, was found dead in the camera room, heart pierced by a steel needle, a method known only to elite operatives. The footage? Wiped. The sensors? Disabled under a technical malfunction. Deeks tried to bury the case, but the rumor spread like wildfire. The silence killed a guard. It was a warning. It's only the beginning. But Beckett knew, and even Deeks suspected, Elias never killed without purpose. That death wasn't random. It was a message for someone outside. Beckett moves with Donnie's evidence in hand. Beckett finally had enough. Maps, recordings, photos, even prison files exposing Harlan Deeks' ties to private ops, manipulating political inmates, experimenting with behavioral control, forging transfer orders. This wasn't just a conspiracy. It was a shadow system, hidden within the US prison system itself. Beckett reached out to contacts in Congress, filed a formal complaint, but he knew time was running out. If they discovered he was acting alone, he'd be next. The last night before the storm. Elias spent the night in silence, but the ghosts were already moving. One by one, they took their positions: laundry, infirmary, kitchen, maintenance rooms, central ventilation, all executed without a single word. Cell 47 stood empty. Elias waited in the dark as if expecting someone. At 3:33 a.m., Deeks was shaken awake by an urgent call. All doors in Block E just opened on their own, and the internal system stopped responding. Deeks sprinted to the control room, but there were no operators inside. Only a screen flashing one single word: execution. Outside, under the night sky, the world still slept. But inside Lanesborough, the final war had begun, and this time, the system itself was the prisoner. 3:34 a.m. The emergency siren wailed, but never sounded so silent. On the monitors, every screen was black, except one. Top left corner, cell 47, empty. Warden Harlan Deeks stared at it, breath ragged, sweat dripping, hands trembling. He knew control was gone, completely. Elias Kane was no longer in custody. The prison was his, inside the walls. The ghosts moved like cogs in an invisible machine, each with a role. Every block secured in silence, no screaming, no wasted violence. The mission wasn't chaos, it was exposure, from the inside out. In the kitchen, gas lines were cut. In the infirmary, medical files copied. In the records office, hundreds of paper files scanned with equipment pieced together from stolen parts over months.